Run.
That's right, folks. Run. We are back with another installment of The Problem With That. And today's problem with that is going to be about erasing history. Now, we've obviously, most of mine and most of what's being talked about around, besides COVID, is the whole George Floyd murder. And it was a murder, folks. Nobody's going to argue that police officer went way past what he should have done as a police officer. Nobody's sitting back and justifying what happened at all. But some of our discussion and a lot of what's going on around this country has actually derailed from what the original problem and everything was. And now we're on to taking down Confederacies because the Black Lives Matter movement has gotten another foothold again. We're starting to take down statues, monuments, and we're erasing name brands because of their potential link to slavery. We're getting rid or we're defacing monuments of Abraham Lincoln, the president that was president when slavery was abolished. They're even taking down and destroying some of his monuments. Well, the problem with that is if we go ahead and allow this to continue to happen across the board over a lot of things that just because maybe 150 some years ago, 200 years ago, what was not a part of our history that we want to try to remember or have in our history, we're going to hurt the future generations. We're going to hurt a lot of what is to come as a country. Every country, every society, every group of people throughout history of humankind has had a part of it that was racist, that had slaves of another geographic of humans. Every one of them. We can go back 4,000 years, and it happens over and over and over again. And I think now, when we're in the 21st century, I really think and hope that it is going to change. It has changed. It's nowhere near what it used to be 100 years ago. Obviously, you're still going to have some hatred and some racism and some bigotry running through society. We're probably always going to have that. That's probably never going to go away because there's always going to be one or two people out of billions that still think that way and think they're better than somebody else based on their background, their ethnicity, where they come from, where they lived, what their education is. All of it, what their sexual preference is, it's not going to change. There always is going to be a group of people in our society. It's how we handle that as a society that needs to change. So the problem with that is it's not going to help us grow and everything else. I have an article here. Is removing Confederate monuments like erasing history? Now, this article is dated April 25th, 2017. So this was 3 years ago, folks. Almost 2 years after New Orleans Mayor Mitch Ladrule, I can't pronounce his name, called for the removal of 4 Confederate statues from public space around the city, the process finally got underway shortly after 1 a.m. Monday morning. The Liberty Monument, which paid tribute to vigilantes who sought to overthrow the city's interracial Reconstruction-era government, was the first to go in the coming days and weeks. The 3 remaining Confederate statues honored Robert General Lee and Confederate President Jefferson Davis, who also was removed. Similar debates has appeared, and we're right back into it 3 years later, into the debate again. The issue resurfaced in large measures following the June 2015 murder of 9 African-American parishioners by white supremacists in Charlotte. Removing of the Confederate from the State House grounds in the wake of the massacre. Several other cities taking similar measures earlier this year. Alfred L. Brophy, the judge, John J. Prishner, distinguished professor of law at UNC Chapel Hill, warns against the rush to rid the country of these tyrannical reminders of Jim Crow and the conflict of white supremacy. The initial thought is that removing these monuments leads to forgetting. We need to be aware that people in power at the time thought it was appropriate to celebrate slavery and Jim Crow. And that's the thing. A lot of these statues were erected between 1932 and 68 or 72, somewhere in there. And they were erected to have fear into the black population. Well, there are statues and we'll get into some of the things. Yeah, so some of these statues do need to be removed. I'm not saying all of them do. We can't be just taking down all history of slavery and racism and thinking that's going to solve the problem, because it's not. So some of these do have to be removed. And those during that era, yeah, I can see, because they were used as a tool. But Abraham Lincoln statues, Aunt Jemima as a figure for a product. No, those don't. You got to look back in that history and go, okay, this was the history that started, but around the 1900s, that history changed for the better, because Aunt Jemima and the family are proud of what a couple of these ladies that were Aunt Jemimans is what they called them. Their families are proud of what these ladies did, because these ladies accomplished something that during their time was very rare for a black woman. And that was become a spokesperson for a product. Going around being the face of a product. So to say we need to erase this stuff because of history of racism and it stems back to when there were slaves, got to remember, it's only been 150 years without slavery. Most of history of mankind, again, goes back to slavery. So we're going to erase everything but the last 100 to 150 years? It's just ridiculous to even think that. I do have, let's see here, hold on, let me pull this up real quick if it wants to go. If you do remember history class at all, and I'm a big component of German history, part German, obviously you can tell by the flag behind me. Hitler burned books and tore down monuments in an attempt to erase history too. He wanted to erase that type of history in that country, the good part of Germany, because he had a different vision on what it should be. He tried to erase it, get rid of it, just tear it down. We don't need to see this anymore, because then people start thinking and realizing and knowing what's going on. I just got a text here. Hold on, let me see. I don't normally get a text when I'm on the show, but it's from one of my good listeners and a supporter of this show. It's 2P. Well, 2P, what do you got to say today? History is the human race story of events that happen. Some good, bad, but all our story. If we get rid of bad, how will we know what not to do? If we get rid of good, how do we know what not to aspire to? Is there still racists in the world? Yes. Are all white people racist? Hell no. You want to fight for injustice? I'll fight with you. You want to get the normalcy changed with race? I'm with you. But when you start terrorizing and destroying and getting rid of our history, that's when I have a problem. Very well put, 2P. Very well put. And that's where I'm starting to have a problem. I was all on board. I was grateful. Yes, we have a brutality in our police forces. Well, we have actual still racism that runs rampant in some areas that needs to be addressed. But then everything derailed. People started burning and looting and destroying. And that's not the way you change history. That's not the way you change the future. Until we can sit down, and I've always said this before, until we can actually sit down and look at this a little differently and talk and discuss and have actual open conversations where people's feelings aren't fucking getting hurt because you said one thing that they don't agree with because you're not agreeing with them all the time, nothing's going to change. If you think you pull a gun on somebody and make them change their mind and change how they act, no, the only thing you're going to do is kill them, and then they have no say no more, and then you're a dictator, and it's your say, and it's what you want to do. And the next revolution, I've said, is not going to be fought at the barrel of a gun. It's not going to be fought on the streets. It's going to be fought through and won through discussion. So history is not there for you to like or dislike. It is there for you to learn from. And if it offends you, even better. Because then you are less likely to repeat it. It's not yours to erase. It belongs to all of us.
Oh shit! Oh shit! Oh shit! Run.